Hey everyone, I'm Abbey Sharp. Welcome to Abbey's Kitchen. Today's video is sponsored by Ritual, and we will be looking at professional ballerina Scout Forsythe's What I Eat in a Day on a Rehearsal Day. But first, let me tell you about my sponsor, Ritual. So I've been taking Ritual's prenatal for years now because I really trust their formulations and their strict testing protocols. I was really excited when I found out that they were launching a line of protein powders because, as I discussed in my supplement video right here, it's not always easy to know which products that you can trust. So this is a brand new third-party tested protein powder that officially launched this month, shortly after I posted my roundup of some safe third-party tested protein powders. So again, it's really important that we choose a protein powder that is third-party tested to ensure that you are getting an effective product with traceable ingredients, especially since the supplement world is otherwise a bit of the Wild West. But Ritual's formulation contains 20 grams of traceable plant-based pea protein per serving, which helps to support our muscles, brain, bones, and satiety. And since it can be hard for some folks to get their protein in on busy days, it's really a convenient option for on the go. It also has a simple ingredient list with no artificial flavors, colors, or major allergens, and it's sweetened with monk fruit and fermented sugar canes. So it may be a good option for those with food sensitivities. So if you want to try out Ritual's new protein powder line, you can check out the link in the description. Also, you can pause the screen or look at the description to check out my disclaimer, including a trigger warning to those with current or previous experiences with disordered eating, as I will be talking about numbers and portions. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and ring that little bell so that you never miss out on a video. All right, let's get to the video.
I'm typically up around 6:37. I'm an early riser and I really like it.
I cannot remember the last time I got to sleep till 7. And call it early. Life goals right here, folks.
I always try to hit at least a liter of water a day. If not that, I try to go for 3. Anywhere between that, I know I'm feeling good, but anything less than that is when I'm like, I need water.
So that sounds like a good amount of water.
No water for me. Not while rabies causes fear of water. Solidarity.
Michael, that's irrational!
The reality is that even though public health campaigns have drilled it into our brain that we need 8-ounce glasses of water every single day, this is just a very, very crude estimation and average. More specifically, the Institute of Medicine recommends that most men need around 13 cups and women around 9 cups. But this number changes significantly, even more so with exercise, heat, altitude, etc. So my guess is that Scout's needs on training days may actually be pretty high. But rather than trying to count out or calculate how many cups of water you're drinking, I say pay close attention to your body and keep an eye out for some early signs of dehydration like thirst, fatigue, dry lips, or darker yellow pee. Your pee should be a pretty light, buttery yellow, not clear, and also not dark and cloudy.
You can check my urine! Check it! Check my urine!
Always worth a quick little peekaroo before you flush.
Scoop it out, put it on top, pepper some nutritionally sometimes, and if I'm feeling a little fancy, I'll toss a little cayenne pepper on there and a little salt. So once my breakfast is all prepared and ready to go, I bring it over to my kitchen table. That's when you know it's a good poached egg.
We have never seen a breakfast like this before on YouTube, have we?
Oh.
But no, of course, we've got some avocado toast. She uses either a sourdough or some kind of a sprouted bread. She's got 1 poached egg and some nutritional yeast and salt and pepper on there. Awesome. I mean, I guess this breakfast is popular for a reason. Sprouted bread and sourdough have become popular lately because they're naturally easier to digest and also lower in anti-nutrients and the glycemic index. Both options are not gluten-free, so obviously would not be appropriate for somebody with true gluten intolerance or celiac, but they are lower FODMAP. So for folks who are struggling to digest some bread products, they may be a better tolerated choice. As for the breakfast as a whole, this looks pretty good to me. We've got fiber and healthy fats in the avocado, protein and fat in the egg, and fiber-rich carbs in the bread. And I love the addition of nutritional yeast for not only a little flavor, but also for a little extra protein and vitamin B12. It's not a huge breakfast, so I am interested to see how far this takes her, especially considering it sounds like she has a pretty heavy training day ahead.
Right now I'm trying to limit my coffee intake, and I've noticed a better effect on my energy levels throughout the day. And this is me not on coffee, so.
I think this is a really good personal observation for Scout and not a particularly surprising finding to me. So coffee may be the most widely consumed stimulant in the world that works by increasing brain activity, enhancing focus, and delaying fatigue. But generally speaking, we see these effects around an hour after consumption, and on average, they last about 5 hours.
5 hours later.
For folks who have created a bit of a dependence on caffeine, which, let's be real, is a lot of us, coming off of that high can result in a bit of a crash that leaves us feeling maybe even more tired than where we started. This effect is often exacerbated when people substitute energy from food for energy from caffeine, which is just a big no-no for me. So to avoid the crash, we want to make sure that we are limiting our consumption to no more than 300 to 400 milligrams of caffeine a day.
No, God!
Or about 3 to 4 cups of coffee earlier on in that day. And remember that the best quality energy comes from calories, not caffeine. It is important to prioritize eating a balanced breakfast or meal to give us the energy that we actually are craving. In Scout's case, and this may be true for any performing artist, coffee in large amounts may cause jitteriness or lack of precision, which I know as a former dancer myself is really important. But if you need like a little help in the morning, but you want to avoid that instant energy burst of coffee, matcha also contains caffeine, but it also is paired with a unique amino acid called L-theanine that tends to deliver a more prolonged, balanced hum of energy rather than a huge spike.
I always have my journal with me in the morning, and I just love writing in my journal, kind of setting my intentions for the day, releasing whatever negative energy I had yesterday.
I think journaling is a really amazing way to start your day, especially for those in professions where, they really need to be on and focus at the task ahead. Research suggests that journaling can help to increase cognitive functioning, strengthen the immune system, reduce stress and stress effects, and decrease symptoms of asthma, arthritis, and other health conditions. So yeah, I think that is really great advice from Scout.
I like to start my day with sweets when I'm doing rehearsals because I get so hyper from sugar. So if I have that morning, like when I'm walking to work where I'm like up here, by the time I'm getting to ballet class, my energy level's already starting to do that crash.
So even though Scout's talking is a little bit mumbled here, she actually just said that she avoids sweets on training days because it makes her super hyper. So I want to comment on this idea of sugar as a scapegoat for hyperactivity. For so long, parents have been convinced that any amount of sugar will cause some kind of chemical imbalance that will make their kids kind of start bouncing off of walls. But here's the thing, the evidence does not support this common theory. Yes, sugar is a carbohydrate and carbohydrates give you energy. It's also a simple carbohydrate, which means that it provides energy to the cells faster than something with, let's say, fiber or protein bound up in it. But research on sugar in children doesn't actually suggest that it makes them super hyper. If sugar does have some kind of measurable effect on children's behavior, it's likely more due to the experience that having sugar is bound up in. So a birthday party, a holiday, a treat. This is why, as I've discussed in great detail in my Halloween candy video right here, I strongly advise against heavy restriction of sugar and sweet foods with kids. And the same thing goes for us adults. Research on sugar addiction suggests that any novel experience is likely to be arousing and stimulating. So it's very possible that the mere experience of allowing yourself something novel like a donut before 10 a.m. could cause a little extra excitement. But back to what Scout was specifically saying.
If I'm not fully in my body focused on what I'm doing, it can be a risk or a foreshadow for maybe stepping on my point shoe wrong, not thinking of something, twisting an ankle.
Okay, so this makes sense, and I definitely agree. I do think Scout's thinking as an athlete makes sense in the context of her energy needs for a very busy rehearsal day. Straight up carbs are not gonna give her that even-keeled, slow release energy all morning long if she has a long rehearsal to get through. She has clearly collected data on her energy needs on rehearsal days and has found that having a balanced, savory breakfast with protein, fat, and fiber-rich carbs is more sustaining than, let's say, grabbing a Danish or having a bowl of sugary cereal. This makes sense. This really comes down to talking about that hunger-crushing combo of fiber, protein, and healthy fat. But you also don't need to avoid sugar or carbs at breakfast. You just want to aim to make sure that they're not naked at the party for promoting a longer lasting energy supply. So again, pair those carbs with some fiber, protein, fat, and you know you're gonna be in good shape.
After class, we have about a 20-minute break, and that's rehydration and usually snacking on whatever fruit I brought that day. Honeycrisp are the best apples. I try to go with a whole fruit or a whole food before grabbing a processed thing, but you know what? Sometimes I don't have a banana and a granola bar is right there. So I tried to avoid it, but if it's there and I need it, I'm gonna eat it.
Okay, so Scout has just completed an hour-and-a-half rehearsal before snack, and based on my calculations, it's been 4 hours since she had anything to eat. I don't know about you, but I would be ravenous at this point, and an apple or like a granola bar just wouldn't suffice, especially knowing that I had to get through another leg of rehearsals before I actually get to lunch. Knowing that she only had 1 egg worth of protein at breakfast and just completed what most adults would see as a pretty serious workout, I would definitely want to see her get in some more protein with her carbs. So maybe pairing that apple with some Greek yogurt or cottage cheese, or having it with a protein shake or bar would be a really good way to fuel up between those classes.
I also brought a little Tupperware of Celtic sea salt that I bring to the studios. I learned not too long ago that putting a little bit of that in your water helps with the minerals that we need to kind of help digest and hydrate, and it's full of electrolytes. It's a really healthy alternative from a Gatorade or any kind of sugary energy drink.
Most of us who are just doing like a recreational workout here or there likely don't need to refuel after our little gym sesh with electrolyte replacements or Gatorade-like drinks. But if you're doing prolonged continuous exercise lasting 1 to 4 hours or longer, like Scout, a sports drink with sodium and potassium may be beneficial. It's worth noting, however, that the evidence to support sports drinks that we have has been done on carbohydrate-based drinks, since there is a benefit in replenishing lost glycogen stores in these sports-specific scenarios as well. So like Gatorade, for example, yes, it has electrolytes, but it also has those carbs in the form of sugar. It does sound like, however, Scout's main rationale for using this sea salt is for reducing muscle cramps, and this in theory makes sense. However, research actually suggests that electrolyte and hydration levels are not the sole causes of exercise-induced muscle cramps. Supplementing might help delay them, but the cramping often occurs regardless, and researchers aren't entirely sure why that is or what to do about it. Having said that, if little salt water helps Scout with her cramps, then amazing. Like, no harm, no foul. But even if it does, she probably could get away without having to buy the really fancy Celtic sea salt for her water. While Celtic sea salt is lower in sodium chloride and higher in potassium than like regular table salt, it is one of the most expensive salt options. And you'd probably get better bang for your buck by just putting a little bit of cheap kosher salt into your water and then pairing it with a food source of potassium like an orange or banana. Let's see what's next.
3 o'clock rolls around and now we're back on break. From 3 to 4 is our lunch break. If I have time on Monday, I try to meal prep. Right now it's been a veggie soup because it's cold outside. I stole the recipe from my mom. Super nutritious and delicious. Sometimes I'll put a grain in there at the bottom. I love farro down at the bottom, but sometimes it's a little too much like wheat throughout the day for me.
Wow, okay. I just need to do a little time check here. So,
she had 1 slice of avocado toast at 7:30 a.m., exercise for an hour and a half, then an apple at 11:45, then another 3 hours of rehearsals.
And now we're having a bowl of vegetable soup at 3 p.m. for lunch. I get that we all have unique hunger cues and caloric needs, but I feel like fainting just at the thought of attempting a pirouette on just that. Now, obviously, that looks like a really delicious, nutritious soup. I mean, we've got loads of fiber-rich veggies, we've got a little fat in there from the cooking oil, and she does say that sometimes she adds a whole grain like farro in there, but other times she feels like it's too much wheat in the day for her. I have a lot of thoughts. First of all, I don't think I would ever characterize one small piece of bread plus a little farro in a soup as too much wheat. These are both super healthy, nutrient-dense sources of whole grains. And for an athlete who is exercising for 7.5 hours a day, those carb needs are pretty high. 2, this soup has maybe 150 calories a bowl, and I'm being super generous. I wouldn't even call that a solid snack in my books, never mind a meal for an athlete. Now, I did notice that there was maybe a little potato in there, but we could definitely add a little more carb in the form of some grains or a couple pieces of bread. We would also want to add a source of protein, so some beans or chicken or tofu to help replenish those glycogen stores and promote muscle repair after doing 4.5 hours of strenuous exercise. I mean, this soup could make like a nice little side dish to a more substantial lunch meal, like a big ass sandwich or like a massive wrap or a burrito, but honestly, just not enough food.
Try to heat it up at my house first because at the studio they only have a microwave and I'm very anti-microwave.
I think there's a lot of myths floating around out there when it comes to microwaves, all of which would probably need a whole video to fully unpack. But I just want to quickly remind you that nuking your food is not dangerous to your health. Microwaves do not make your food radioactive because microwaves themselves are not radioactive. They are electromagnetic and they work by causing water molecules in food to like move super quickly, which warms up the food. Also, it doesn't zap nutrients out of your food any more than any other cooking method. In fact, because it cooks food quickly, it's actually one of the best cooking methods for nutrient preservation. But anyways, if you want to cook things the old-fashioned way, great. I don't care. Works for me. But I just wouldn't feel guilty about leaning on some of your quick cooking appliances to help you get a balanced meal on the table super fast.
I think of food as fuel and what is going to sustain me for the rest of my rehearsal period.
Okay, so I appreciate that being an athlete often means that you need to think more than your average person about nutrition in your meals and how that can directly impact your body's performance. I'm just gonna call this out right now as just not being enough food or enough carbs or enough protein to serve as adequate fuel to sustain that level of intense activity. Let's see what's next.
The reason I love bringing like something simple like a soup or a salad, it's easier on my stomach. If I don't meal prep and bring like a soup or something in from home, there's a make your own salad place right around the corner.
Is it just me, or has easy on digestion become wellness culture code for lower calorie in an era where bloating has become the new fat? Let's break this down, folks. Soup may be easier on the belly than, let's say, a salad because cooked vegetables are typically easier on digestion, so that's great. But that means that salad is probably the worst choice for a post or pre-workout meal in between these strenuous training sessions because all those raw vegetables are slower to digest and they can cause a little bit more bloating. And we actually want faster fuel to get that energy that we need. Honestly, for sports nutrition, her vegetable soup isn't even the best option either. What ideally she would want is a source of lean protein like chicken or tofu, probably not beans if she wanted to avoid any digestive discomfort and gas, and some satiating carbs like sweet potato, quinoa, rice, or bread. A little fat would help make the meal more satiating since she does have a little ways to go to get to dinner, but you really wouldn't want a super greasy, heavy meal like something deep fried. And you would definitely want to keep those vegetables cooked and almost more like a garnish, not the entire crux of the meal. Ugh. And we still have 3 hours of rehearsals to go. I'm tired for her.
I brought myself a little snack. It's good to have a little backup snack. The hip peas are pretty filling because they're puffy. So just a couple of those, I'm like, okay, I've got some like good fuel in me.
A couple of those are filling because they're puffed. I love these puffs, especially the vegan white cheddar ones. And they do have a little more protein and fiber per ounce than, let's say, some other kind of like cheesy. But I wouldn't characterize a few of these as filling just because they're puffed. They're puffy because they're mainly air. And that air literally dissolves into mush when it hits your tongue. Trigger warning, I am about to casually mention something pretty problematic, so please skip ahead if you have a history of disordered eating. But I used to be a dancer myself, and for some reason, this statement just reminded me of the young dancers that I used to know who would like fill their stomachs with cotton balls and tissue paper to make them feel full without actual food. Yeah, it was bad. Now, I do not think that this is what Scout is suggesting at all. And I'm also not suggesting that Scout has an eating disorder at all. I'm not her dietitian. I don't know her. I'm not here to diagnose anyone. But I do want to flag that if she were my client and she needed a filling snack in the middle of her 3-hour rehearsal, I wouldn't choose chickpea snack puffs, especially since she talks about how she chooses food mainly as fuel. This is fun food, yes, but it's not great fuel for this level of activity. So if she was loving chickpeas and they didn't cause her some kind of digestive distress, a more sustaining option might be roasted whole chickpeas and like a piece of fruit, or maybe some hummus with pita bread. So bottom line, puffs are delicious, puffs are great, and maybe more satiating than like regular cheesies, but not a super filling option just because they're voluminous from air.
7 o'clock rolls around. When I get home, I'm hungry and I just want something quick and easy, so I'll grab leftovers or order something. At night, I opt for something that's a little bit more protein heavy. I want to like refuel my body for tomorrow. I get this guy all plated, and this is when I take my lovely little plate of food over to the table and I scarf it down. And then this is when I add my sauces. I am so happy New York started carrying bitchin' sauce. It is delicious. It's made from almonds. I almost forgot, it's not a proper meal unless you have an avocado in there, so grab whatever you have left over and scoop it on those veggies.
Awesome. So we've got some salmon and roasted veggies with salmon done with a little teriyaki glaze, tons of different colorful vegetables. We've got a kale salad, topped with some bitchin' sauce and half an avocado. Looks like a beautiful meal, and I love the color that we have going on. We've got healthy fats from the salmon, avocado, and the cooking oil, protein in the salmon, and of course, loads of fiber-rich veg. There's also a little carb, as I saw a tiny bit of potatoes in there, but considering the marathon rehearsal that Scout has just completed on very little fuel, this is just not enough carb to replenish those glycogen stores to help her do this again tomorrow. This is just sports nutrition 101. I mean, no amount of foam rolling is going to save her body pain from a low carb, low calorie diet like this.
And get a little like a kombucha drink or something. I'm not a big drinker, especially during the weeks when I'm dancing. So kombucha is like my little go-to, little after dancing treat. It's bubbly and it just tastes good.
I too love a good kombucha, as I see it as just like a flavorful alternative to plain sparkling water that is much lower in sugar than soda pop or sparkling juice.
I'm not a big dessert person. If I am gonna have a dessert, I'd rather it be like a fruit-based dessert where it's like a chocolate covered strawberry or apples and caramel. But you know, occasionally I want a donut.
That sounds delicious, and I am glad to see some carbs coming in here. I also love the idea of making just like a humble piece of fruit, like an apple or strawberries, a little more crave-worthy. So a little caramel dip or chocolate is a great way to make a weekend-worthy dessert on a weekday on the fly.
I can consume what I want. I know what fuels me, gives me energy, sustains me throughout the day, and I always try to choose that. But sometimes it's like, I just want that burrito, and they're like, I want that donut, and that's okay. Like, I think that's my biggest thing, is giving up the fight. It shouldn't be a struggle. Food should be yummy and make you smile, fuel you up, make you feel good. My advice though is always consult with your health practitioner or team to help you and choose what works for you.
So I agree with this sentiment. Even if it is a little confusing, seeing as Scout mentioned earlier that she sees food as fuel, but I agree that food should make you feel good, both physically and emotionally. I also appreciate that what we're seeing here on a rehearsal day may be very different than how Scout may eat when she's hanging out with her friends or off season, when maybe there is a little more room for those donuts or burritos that she mentioned. But if the goal of this video is to showcase how to fuel up for 7.5 hours of intense physical activity, I just think we really missed the mark. So let's look at the stats. Again, trigger warning, I'm talking calories here, so you can skip ahead. But on this day of eating, Scout is getting just over 1,600 calories, with 22% coming from protein, 53% from carbs, and 26% from fat. She's a little low on calcium, iron, and zinc, but otherwise is meeting her micronutrient needs thanks to all of those veggies and fruit. I'm gonna comment on the caloric adequacy in just a minute. What I like here is that Scout doesn't seem to limit added fat. I don't see a lot of obsessive behaviors around food like careful calorie counting or weighing foods out, which I know a lot of us saw in a different What a Ballerina Eats in the Day by Munchies. Scout seems to eat a variety of foods, and her meals seem simple and accessible. There weren't like a bunch of really strange over-the-top supplements of specialty ingredients and things like that. Really, just mainly a lot of vegetables, which of course may be expensive for a lot of other people. But thankfully, I didn't hear a lot of demonizing of foods or food groups, and any comments that she did make about what she eats or avoids was largely rooted in her own data of what she feels works to fuel her body for work best. Now let's talk about what I would probably suggest if Scout was my client. And as a reminder, I am not a sports dietitian, so I did consult a few of my colleagues with this, whom I will leave links to below. But in short, this just does not look like nearly enough food. While everyone is unique, so I can't say for sure what Scout's unique needs are, our best calculations would put a young woman of her size exercising at that elite level well above 3,000 calories per day. That's more than twice what she is currently consuming. Now, I appreciate that Scout knows her body best, and this may genuinely feel good to her at this moment. It also would be unsafe to ever suggest that somebody immediately double their caloric intake overnight. So if I was counseling Scout, I would be making small changes over time. But I just mentioned this caloric number to point out that from a sports nutrition perspective, this is far from ideal. She was going pretty long stretches on pretty small meals, and when she does get a chance to refuel, her choices are far too low calorie to provide maximal energy for those muscles to perform and recover. In other words, we need more carbs, more protein, and more calories, period. A lot more. So this could mean turning that soup into a side dish to complement a sandwich with bread and some kind of lean meat or tofu or protein, and making sure to throw a sweet potato or rice or pasta into her dinner meal. I would also beef up those snacks to make sure that they're not just filling because of their volume, but because of their actual nutrient value. Again, this may be working for Scout right now, and I fully acknowledge that she knows her body better than I would. But I just need to address this for all the recreational dancers or athletes who are watching and thinking, wow, I must be eating way too much food. Dancers need a lot of food. I also have to address the elephant in the room, and that is the prevalence of disordered eating in the dance community. According to a large systematic review and meta-analysis, 12% of ballet dancers have some form of diagnosed eating disorder. That's a really big number. And I would bet that that number is insanely high if we also fact in undiagnosed forms of disordered eating like orthorexia. But when you think about the culture, it's not really that much of a surprise. So for one, ballet rehearsal takes place in skin-tight leotards surrounded by mirrors where every bump and curve can be analyzed and scrutinized. Two, the most successful female ballet dancers are often described as floating, ethereal, light as a feather, as they're expected to leap through the air or be lifted without any effort or strain. Three, young girls start dancing pretty early when their bodies are underdeveloped and small, and typically continue throughout puberty when they just naturally start to grow. So this inevitable and healthy growth trajectory can often be a catalyst for trying to manipulate and prevent those changes. And finally, we can't forget about the core culture of dance, where control and discipline are celebrated and synonymous with success. It's a no pain, no gain world. My mom was actually a professional ballerina, and she used to tell me that her teachers would throw dishes at her for not performing to their standards. And if your toes weren't bleeding, you weren't doing it right. Honestly, my mom's feet are permanently wrecked from the abuse. So clearly, it takes a lot of control and self-discipline to do something every day that gives you pain. And that same discipline is often required to maintain an eating disorder as well. But here's the thing, not only does undereating result in suboptimal performance and training potential, but there's also a very real risk of long-term health outcomes like delayed puberty, amenorrhea, infertility, osteoporosis, and severe injury. I want to make it clear that I am not anti-dance. I danced competitively my entire life, and while I don't have daughters, I would enroll my boys in dance in a heartbeat if they showed interest. But the statistics don't lie, and the reality is that undereating is often baked into the culture itself. It becomes so second nature that a mature dancer like Scout probably doesn't even notice that she's doing it. She might even think that she's sharing a day of eating that debunks the myth that dancers don't eat because she feels she eats so much more than her peers. That is how much worse I guess it can be. That is what living and breathing in disordered culture for so long does with your relationship with food. It turns external messages about food into real internal ones to the point that they feel like intuition. So let's keep the comments here kind, empathetic, and supportive. I don't think Scout is trying to share misinformation about what to eat. She just has been fed so much of it all of her life herself. And on that note, that is all that I have for you guys today. Thank you again to Ritual for sponsoring this video. If you liked it, be sure to give it the thumbs up. Leave me a comment below with who you'd like to see me review next. Subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time on Abby's Kitchen. Bye.